Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Friday, March 21st, 2025 at 1:03 in the afternoon. So this afternoon, we're starting by continuing our discussions on White Career Technical Education School District. And so we have Tom Flanagan, Superintendent of Burlington School District, and Jason Reed, Director of the Burlington Tech Center. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We've been talking to a lot of people and trying to figure out the direction that we should go on to recommend to our education committee when it comes to CTEs. Your expertise is valuable to us as we move forward. So thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having us. Chair Marcotte, Vice Chair Granning, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm Tom Flanagan, Superintendent of the Burlington School District.
And I'm Jason Reed, the Director of the Senate.
So we do have prepared comments that we were planning just to walk through. They're a page front and back, so it shouldn't take too long, and we're open. We'd love to have a conversation as well, if that makes sense.
Great.
And we'll send over our comments or our testimony.
Yeah, we'd like to
afterwards. Okay, great. So we really appreciate the committee's interest in better understanding how BTC is structured. Burlington Technical Center, I'll call BTC as we go on, is structured, and how our governance model supports the success of our students and partnerships. BSD and BTC shares your commitment to ensuring every student, no matter where they live, has access to high quality, relevant CTE programs that prepare them for success in the workforce and beyond. We support working to make CTE an accessible and important aspect of Vermont students' education, and we agree that equity and access must be at the heart of any changes to the system. These goals are aligned to the work we are doing at Burlington Technical Center, and we are encouraged by the desire to center equity and access in this process. So thank you. However, we believe decisions about CTE should stay close to our students, particularly in Burlington, their sending schools, and our regional industries. Strong direct relationships with local industries and partner high schools are essential to maintain and to build programs that respond to real workforce needs. A single centralized governance model risks weakening the community connections that are so vital to CTE success. Rather than moving immediately to a single statewide district, we encourage a more measured approach that builds on existing regional strengths while addressing system-wide goals. Specifically, we support encouraging increased regional collaboration where it makes sense, rather than imposing a one-size-fits-all model. Continuing to strengthen partnerships with regional high schools and continued collaboration with other CTE centers through our common regional advisory board and director partnership. Expanding and helping regional advisory boards foster deep community engagement. Setting clear statewide goals for access and equity, and maintaining local flexibility in how those goals are met, which is happening now. Increasing funding for transportation, which remains a major barrier to access for many students. More transportation would allow for students to more easily jump across regions where necessary. We are also concerned about moving forward with major changes to the CTE governance without fully considering how they intersect with other education and funding reforms underway. And we know you all are thinking about that deeply now, but wanting to make sure that the work that's happening here is really connected to the broader ed reform work that's happening as well. I think the decisions should be informed by a comprehensive analysis and careful planning to avoid unintended consequences, particularly the risk of disrupting CTE centers and programs that are already successful in serving students well. We recommend aligning this work with the broader efforts in the Education and Ways and Means committees, and taking the time to model different scenarios, engage stakeholders, and ensure any changes advance equity and expand access without undermining what is working. BTC is committed to working collaboratively towards solutions that ensure all Vermont students benefit from a strong CTE system, and we respectfully urge you to take the time to get this right. With that said, I'll turn it over to Director Reed.
Thank you. Again, for the record, my name is Jason Reed. I'm the director at the Burlington Technical Center. Thank you, Tom, Chair, Vice Chair. Thank you for having us. As Superintendent Flanagan said, I'm the director of the Tech Center. This is my third school year at Burlington Tech Center. This is my third position in career and technical education. I worked in post-secondary career education right down the street, actually, when New England Culinary Institute was still in operation, and also worked at the Job Corps Center in Virgins until I found my way to the BSD. I'm in my 19th year at the BSD this year. So happy to be there and continue with BTC. BTC is a half-day center. It's under the supervision of Superintendent Flanagan, under the governance of the Burlington School Board, and it has existed this way since its origin decades ago. My research brought up a couple different dates of its origin, but several decades ago. Over the years, BTC has established long-term relationships with our region's sending schools, and these relationships continue to evolve as education shifts, proficiency-based grading, flexible pathways, those kinds of evolving areas of education. These relationships are working well and creating an excellent education for our region's students enrolled at career and technical education. As part of a well-rounded pre-K through 12 education, we really see ourselves as situated in that well-rounded education for Vermont students rather than just a job training center. We have mechanisms in place for school district leaders, industry representatives, higher education representatives to have a voice through our regional advisory board model. And then each individual program has a program advisory committee, which is also made up of industry, higher education folks, alumni, and we're actually moving forward to have current student voice on that. And I'm actually borrowing that from Superintendent Flanagan and his student reps on the school board in Burlington. I think it will be a nice addition. We're closely monitored by our host board and the Agency of Education through district progress monitoring, an annual survey that Burlington collects data on all of its schools, including the technical center, and the state required massive comprehensive local needs assessment, which I can get into more detail if you have questions about that. Our performance data under the current system is meeting or exceeding the AOE's targets for us. And with host district support, our district data shows high student and family satisfaction. We're continually considering our budget and tuition rates based on the goals of the BSD and challenges facing our sending districts. There is work to do in controlling costs due to increased salaries and healthcare expenses primarily. We continue to work on this in making career and technical education financially accessible to all districts' students. And I thank you for your time and welcome any questions.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that your school is hosted in another school?
We're under the umbrella of the Burlington School District, and prior to the PCB situation you may have heard of with Burlington High School and Burlington Technical Center, we were directly adjacent and connected to the Burlington High School. And then high schools from around the region would bus to that location. Now, as we're building two separate locations for Burlington Tech Center, we're in a lot of different locations. If we include our adult education aviation program, we have 6 locations. So the busing has gotten a bit more complicated in getting all the region schools there, but those districts have been great in making that happen for their students. So we will be back connected to Burlington High School when it's constructed, and then we're going to have a separate location at the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport for certain programs, including aviation, of course.
Okay, well, that gets me to my other question is, do you have some shared expenses with the places that you're hosted?
We do, and if I think I understand your question correctly, we're paying rent to landlords who own these buildings.
Mm-hmm.
The Burlington School District has taken the biggest hit on that. But to be quite transparent, it was last school year that the BSD board finance said we've got to start distributing this out, these costs through our tuition to the sending districts. And so that bumped up some of our other sending district contributions to this rent that we're paying at several different, we have 3 that we're paying rent currently. Is that,
I mean,
that help
that's
your-
part of it, I guess, like any kind of cost sharing, because we've heard from other centers that are actually hosted like within the schools that they have some cost sharing that goes on with the schools. So I'm just trying to understand the
Yeah.
whole kind of like.
I'm glad you said
Yeah.
that. So, and also what has existed forever, even before the buildings were condemned, is BTC out of its specific budget, which is made up of money from all of the region's districts, will pay a fund transfer to the Burlington School District for services like human resources services, some transportation costs. We tend to pay that out of our own budget, but some things, there's some blurry lines between what the budget that our host district will just pay for us and versus what comes specifically out of our budget, which is quite separate. And that amount, just to my point about trying to make this continually affordable for all of our sending districts, Burlington has also incurred some greater costs in that to help to keep our budget down and our tuition rate out to sending schools down. It's complicated.
I appreciate
And I would just say, we do that because we don't consider ourselves a host
Yep.
to Burlington Technical Center.
Mhm.
Burlington Technical Center is one of our schools. Jason's on my leadership team. They're a shining example of deeper learning, which is one of our priority areas for our district. And when I came into the district 5 years ago, unfortunately, it was the first day of school, my first year, I had to move us out of BHS and BTC, but they were, together in space, in the spaces that we coexisted in together. So it's a small, I understand the host district sort of language and I get that. No criticism there. I'm just, when I think about BTC, I think about BTC as a part of BSD and as one of the schools, and something that I think brings a lot of value to our community.
Thanks for your question.
Very interesting. We're hearing from different regions.
Yeah.
And they all have a little bit, not entirely different structures, but you certainly have a different structure. It sounds like you have partly a comprehensive, is maybe the wrong word, but it's all part of it. All the high school and the CTE are sort of the same unit. You just have different programs and things, but then you also have sending districts. I'm not sure what proportion of that your students are sending versus, Burlington. So that's an interesting model too. And we've heard a bunch of questions about or concerns around a bunch of problems in terms of how do you get better access to students. And they range from things like the tuition system, some dysfunction there, a whole bunch of alignment issues in terms of schedules and transportation, a bunch of different things. And I'm wondering, so are those issues for you folks too? I know you have the Burlington sort of piece, but then you also have sending pieces. So I'm wondering how you feel about those other issues that we've been hearing from other CTEs are a problem in terms of access, the funding system, the various alignments.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
I could go on a lot of those details you mentioned. I painted a rosy picture here. There's day-to-day weekly challenges in helping that alignment with all of our different sending districts. So I'll give a couple of examples I hope that help to clarify this. So credits are a big thing. Each high school that we have students from have different graduation requirements. That can be numbers of credits. It can also be very specific classes that school requires a student to take in order for them to meet their graduation requirements. There are things like physical education. There are things like health class, which is a very prescribed set of units that have to be covered to meet the state requirements. And so we are in constant conversation with our sending schools, their counseling departments, partner principals, about fitting in our half-day center so they can specialize in a CTE field while fulfilling those other requirements. It's not seamless. There is a lot of challenge involved in that. And to the point where, and I'll be quite honest, some students elect to take some classes in the summer, or they'll use a college dual enrollment voucher in order to satisfy a graduation requirement for their sending school in order to access CTE. And the reason that I don't think that a single CTE district will heal those issues around graduation is that those sending schools will still have their graduation requirements that their students will have to meet. And I'm not sure how a CTE district would leverage change with all those high schools. We'd prefer to work in partnership with them as we have been to feathering out what is necessary for each student. And the other pressure that we all have, all the students and their families have, is what their next step is. So if it's right into a career development pathway or it's into a degree program in college, colleges are also saying, we want to see this on your transcript. So we've worked hard with our sending schools. It was last school year that we changed our credit awards to better represent the academic learning that happens every day in CTE. Our sending districts were very receptive to that. So a student earns a math credit through our engineering, design, and fabrication program. They might still be worried that it doesn't say pre-calculus on their transcript because of their higher ed aspirations. So that's a complication we'll forever be finessing. But it's more to those, what are the graduation requirements for each high school? And I think our relationships as we have them, certainly not without challenges for the students and their families, but we work in tandem to solve those. And just being that much more separated from the Burlington district in our own district away from, the other K through 12 system, I don't think that it's going to put a dent in those issues.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what high schools send, or what high schools are your students coming? Where are they coming from? And also, what is the relationship or interaction with Essex Technical Center? Something, I mean, I have kids in the district and I found it confusing because they get promotional materials about applying to Essex or BTC.
Yeah.
So, so what is that and what is that? And how do you negotiate with them about what programs to offer, or whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, Jason's going to have most of the answers here, I think, to the questions that you all are working off of. I think one point is that we work closely with the Essex Technical Center, both the superintendent and I, the outgoing superintendent, and Jason and Bob as a part of the regional advisory board. So Beth Cobb and I have sort of become more engaged together in the regional advisory board. And we've done some visioning together in the past couple of years around CTE and Essex and BTC with some of our regional partners. And we've actually worked to try, there is some overlap in programming, but we've worked to make sure we're much more intentional about the types of programming that we offer across the two centers, and that we have where we have overlap, it's because there's a real need for overlap. So I think there's work to do around communication, external communication probably for us, around how those two work together, but it is work that we've been doing together too. I don't know if you want to talk to the schools at Send.
Sure thing.
More there.
So we host all of the schools in Chittenden County. So Mount Mansfield Union High School, South Burlington, Essex High School, Burlington High School, Colchester, Milton, CVU. I think I'm getting them all. I don't mean to insult anyone if I missed one. We also dip into Franklin County a little bit with BFA Fairfax is a sending school. We also have students from Rice Memorial, which is a private high school. Those students come from several different districts, their home district to attend Rice. We have some students from some alternative programs in the area, Burlington's Eagle Bay Academy, Two Roads Academy, Gene Garvin School, So we accept students from those alternative programs as well. We have a couple homeschooled students. We used to have students through a Vermont Adult Learning, but now there's a prohibition to that. So we can no longer have students enroll with Val as well. So we're up to 14 this particular school year. It has, in my time, it has grown to 17, but those might be one student from one school or one alternative program. This year, we also have, and this happens most years, we have a student from Washington County and a student from Lamoille County who are traveling to our aviation maintenance program. We have the only FAA certified aircraft technician maintenance school in the state, and quite honestly, in quite a wide radius. And so that's the only place they can access that. So we're a half-day center. They actually come for the entire day, and they do their junior and senior year in 1 year. They're seniors who have satisfied most of their graduation requirements. And so they're able to focus on building toward their FAA certifications. Did I get all parts of your question there?
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to talk to this just a little bit more because I'm not sure how many other districts in the state are like this, where they're two separate, are there any? Where they're two separate CTEs with two separate school boards that have a shared RAB? Is this the only?
I think we are unique.
Yeah.
So
And they're the
here-
biggest too,
right?
both the biggest.
And I'm curious to the tensions that come with that, right? The two separate boards, shared RAB, coordinating programming. I'm sure there are some synergies, but I'm just curious how that works and doesn't work.
I think from the superintendent level, we've had a good working relationship between kind of the superintendents and the directors. And where there has been some tension between like boards, that's kind of where we've seen more of the tension. I feel like that we navigated productively. And I'm not saying the system we have is the best system. So that's why my big suggestion is we take time to really understand it, which I appreciate you doing now. But I think it's really complex and will take some time to unravel to really make sure the best system is put forward. But even in those cases, right, where a board member may be really pushing, and that happened in a moment of turmoil in Burlington's world, where we were needing to build a new high school quickly or get that moving quickly. And because we were in a Macy's and we had a technical center, right? And so we said, we need to get moving, and we're going to include the technical center in the Burlington High School, Burlington Technical Center building. And there was some pushback, right, from another board in the sending regions to say, well, I don't know if that's what you want to do right now. And that brought us together for some important conversations, I think, about how we kind of a little bit what I spoke to earlier, how we make sure that the programs we offer are not duplicative and they're not competing against each other, but they're more symbiotic and they're kind of supporting each other. And I think there's always work to do there, but we're in a better place because of that tension. So I think there can be some tension. I'm not sure it's the best model, but I feel like the way that we've navigated it has been positive and been good for kids and our students.
One of the steps we've taken, I appreciate your comment about it's kind of confusing with getting promotional materials for both. And what we've taken for a step with the two centers working together, because ultimately we're competing for students because we're dependent on enrollment. We're a half-day center. The Center for Technology Essex is a full-day center. So there is that distinction that students can choose from depending on what their goals are, what their family's desires are. And yet we've in the last couple of years worked to do outreach together. So our folks who go out to all of these sending schools, sometimes multiple times throughout the winter, to educate prospective students, offer events for parents and prospective families to get information, new school counselors, all those kinds of things. We've started doing a lot of those together. And so here's Burlington Technical Center, here's Center for Technology Essex. here are some of the nuances. That looks like an auto program, but here are some nuances there. That feels good to have that partnership. But as I said, we also have to have a healthy enrollment for both of our centers. So there's a little competition. And I would say behind the scenes too, if there's an applicant, if there's a question about an applicant who's applied at both centers, we get on the phone, whether it's their director and principal, Bob Travers, and me, or counseling departments, and say, we got this application from BFA Fairfax, but she said she applied to Northwest, but we want to make sure this kid has a spot. She sounds like she's applying to a lot of centers. Did you get her application? And trying to put the student at the center of being enrolled in CTE and put our enrollment and stuff on us to manage that and really put the student at the center of that. It's not without some tensions and some questions about the location of CTE centers and CTE programs and those kinds of things. But I feel like we have a strong working relationship. I don't know if that got right. My portion got right to the point of your question, but.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at governance models, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know that anybody would design a governance model the way that yours is set up right now, right? It's kind of morphed into this thing, and I can see from being part of it, right? Also, there are a lot of tensions, and I'm curious if there are synergies too, or if it's just figuring out how to navigate the tensions. And I think we focused an awful lot on the tensions, so I think that answers. As we're looking at governance models, we're going to cross this one off our list. In my world, right? Like that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. The other question that I wanted to ask is about the locations. When you had to pivot to multiple locations, was there any learning from that? Like, can CTE education be done well in the field, or is it really necessary to house the programs? And how does, because most places didn't have to learn this. So, and obviously any transition is hard, right? So post that transition of where is everybody and how do I make sure everybody gets where they are? But is there anything to learn from that statewide?
Yeah, I think we sort of look at each other when we ask those questions.
I don't want to override you.
Yeah, but I think also to know, before we came and as we were sort of prepping, I would not be here doing this advocacy if I felt like Jason, if I hadn't asked Jason, do you really think this is what do you want, right? So I just want you all to know that I'm here to be beside Jason and to represent the experience of BTC in our schools. But I'm also open, right, to other ways of thinking about it. Yeah. Do you want to take the question?
That's an important question. And it's been a real challenge. It's a challenge. We are still operating on a crew as if we are in one building, one school counselor, one student support coordinator. But now we're in several different locations, one director. It's really hard to be in those locations. So it's a very challenging model when students are coming in still needing the school-like supports that they're used to, the school counselor, a special educator, those types of things. EL teachers that may have to split across a 5-mile span for a group of students who need English learning support or academic support. We have an academic support specialist that has to kind of bounce around. It's very challenging to operate from a school standpoint. I will say a real benefit and a real opportunity is that building at the airport. If you think about positioning CTE adjacent to exciting industry that can energize young people's visions of their future, whether that has to include higher education, like something like an engineering degree, or it can be right into the workforce, or into our post-secondary aviation program that is aligned with Vermont State University. There's all kinds of pathways there. That building is in an exciting location. And I'm going to tell you a story to illustrate my point. It's also who I am. I apologize, but I was out there. I had seniors in high school doing run-ups on real aircraft. That's where the technician gets in the pilot seat, runs up the aircraft, checking magnetos to make sure they're functioning, checking fuel systems. They're taxiing airplanes. Vermont State University professional pilot students are on the ramp running up their aircraft that they're about to go train to be professional pilots in. Airliners are taking off. The F-35s are coming in. And there's this beautiful new manufacturing facility right beside us as well, where there are engineers, there are people doing advanced manufacturing. And then there's electric vehicles driving around doing airport ops. There's diesel motors driving around doing, and what an exciting place to be a 16, 17, 18-year-old and say, what am I going to do in 2 years when I cross that stage? I think it's a real opportunity. It's been a challenge because we're trying to put more programs in a space than really the grant we received was designed for. It was designed specifically for the aviation workforce development and turning out FAA certified technicians. And that takes 3 years with us in order for students to be eligible to test for the FAA. So I think there's real opportunity there. And we've also tried a pilot program at a regional high school, and that has been more challenging. The layers have been more challenging, again, with the school like supports, working within our boundaries of they're paying us a tuition essentially to provide a student service to their students. Getting those services 10 miles away is challenging. And surprisingly, we are struggling to enroll that program for next school year right now as student schedules. I'm not saying it's not a possibility. It's not an opportunity. It has been very challenging, and we will have to continue to troubleshoot that as we go into the spring. So kind of a long-winded answer there, but I wanted to just kind of give an exciting illustration of how a different location can enhance the learning experience.
And I've got one last question that should be really easy. Wait lists, full programs, not full programs, how does that look for your?
Currently, and for the last, this isn't a scientific study right now without the data in front of me. For the past 3 years that I've been there, yes, wait lists, disproportionate. So what I mean by that is there are some programs that are still slightly under enrolled, and we have programs that if I had 2 or 3 more teachers in that content area and some bigger facilities, we could hold 2 or 3 more sections of those programs. The medical field is very popular with young people right now. And so we have to troubleshoot that with facilities, right? And where there's a need, how can we expand that? And where we're under enrolled, we have to go, back through our CLNA process again next year to see, is that an outreach issue? Is it a workforce development issue? Is it young people aren't interested in that right now? And kind of go through those processes, but not letting it get to the point where it's a financial burden where we have grossly under enrolled programs. Right.
And I would just, in generally, when we moved out of the high school, we saw a drop in enrollment at BTC that is now rebounding.
Yeah.
So I think stability of leadership, stability of location really helps there. And I've just been personally worried about Jason being able to maintain the sort of work-life balance, right? When he's trying to manage across 6 different sites. So I think we will be in multiple sites, at least 2, maybe 3 moving forward, based on the current design. We're excited about what the current design is. But we do have to think about, and we talk often about how can we figure out other ways to support leadership so that if you're at one site for the day, you're also tending to the needs at the other site, which with 6 is just really overwhelming. I think if we could get down to 2 or 3, we have one classroom at Edmonds Elementary School that is, I can't name the program, remind me.
Education, training, and leadership for future educators, human service providers.
So they're embedded in one of our elementary schools. And yeah, so I just think being spread too thin is really hard for just daily operations.
Really seems to me that the students in Chittenden, in your area, are have the best of both worlds. The ones that want to go to a half-day program have that opportunity. The ones that want a full day, and probably the ones that want a full day are ones that aren't expecting to go to college, but they need those certification programs, and they get that in a year, where they may want one, but not as quickly, and go to a half-day program and still be able to stay with their home school. So, I mean, to me, it seems like a huge advantage for the kid.
Yeah, I think it is. And our Burlington High School kids love it. I mean, I spent a day shadowing one of our juniors who is what program is she in? I can never
She's
remember.
an introduction to healthcare, which results in a licensed nursing assistant license.
Yeah, and she's a leader in our district, and invited me to shadow her, and she's shadowing me for a couple days too. And just the energy, right, around being able to, she didn't want to be disconnected from Burlington High School. She wanted to keep that connection to the high school, but she's really interested in what she's learning now and the possibilities for her future as a result of that. And so there's just so much sort of magic in those experiences that we're able to offer kids. And, you know, in a city that has high levels, 40% of our students were English learners. I just think it's really important for us to be thinking about how we're providing opportunities for students that are really right there.
Yeah, just a real quick question. How many students is the CTE program working with a year?
Our enrollment overall. This year we're at 240. That doesn't include our adult students who are enrolled during the day. And I just make that distinction because CTE centers are obligated to serve adult learners, both in daytime high school programs. But each center also offers adult education enrichment courses as well. We're unique and we run an entire year, 8 hours a day adult aviation program. But we have some students who attend as adults during the daytime. So 240, and in the last few years, we've kind of fluctuated. Well, this is the highest it's been in a few years, down to about 225, to give you an idea.
And then for your adult learners that are also involved, how many roughly do you have enrolled?
Right now, full day, we have 8, 10. Don't put that as a quote, but yeah, it's right around there. And interestingly, our adult learners we serve during the daytime are funded differently, and they don't count toward our data or our enrollment data, which helps with funding. So
Yeah, I'm curious just because we also sort of deal with adult CTE too. And,
yeah,
and then I guess actually from your perspective, how many students are enrolled in the Burlington High School system altogether?
Oh, altogether, it's about 3,500. Depends on the time that you ask us that question.
Thank you.
So the description of the high school students, the CTE students taxiing and the F, it was like that very much reminds me of a typical morning in Powell, Vermont. And we have all of those there. That got me thinking.
you had me for a minute.
See what's up at Morse Airport. The thing that it got me thinking about was about a location and what's proximate to the career center, you know, to BTC is in what's proximate to Southwest Tech, what's proximate to the Wyndham Career Center will be different. And what I wanted to touch on, would love to hear your thoughts on, is with respect to governance, what are the sort of layers or levers or conversations, relationships that need to take place to take advantage of what's at hand? And do you find that the governance structure that is the status quo, can you speak a little bit to how those systems interact so that, if we're thinking of something, obviously someone been posited, perhaps a statewide thing, just where, can you speak a little bit to how, what you need to go through to get the students to those experiences and to that, even if it is just serendipity, but to that sort of, those sort of borders that are sort of a little bit porous, and we can sort of see things on one side and the other side. That experience you're articulating for the children, is that something that just happens per chance, or is it something that you work towards intentionally?
I think it's a combination of both. I think the location of that building and the building that the airport made available for renovation and for us to lease for the next 40 years.
And who negotiated that, for example?
Our team, our executive director of operations
The supervisory union or school?
of our school district, of Burlington
Yeah.
School District.
Okay.
And we've had a hangar there for our adult program for many years, so there was that established relationship. But in terms of getting students in proximity to industry, I painted, hopefully a pretty exciting picture there. But that happens also throughout the weeks, every week of our school year, quite honestly, through the work of our teachers. We have a work-based learning coordinator that over a half a decade has built strong relationships with industry partners. And so students are doing job shadows. Professionals are coming in to give presentations. Students are going into those professional facilities to do a project. Our water jet has taken forever to cut through steel. And an industry partner said, we have a big laser that'll cut through that in 30 seconds. Come on over, bring your projects. The students downloaded their 3D modeling onto jump drives and went over. So those are also built through that hard work of our work-based learning coordinator, our teachers. We have a whole series of folks in the medical field who have become strong partners, allowing our students to do clinical rotations, and clinical observations, and in all kinds of fields, including labor and delivery, the emergency department, real life work, providing that relevancy. One of our art students was at Burton Snowboards, working with their graphic design team. She's also a competitive snowboarder for the BSD. So she was merging her skills, her career aspirations, and her snowboarding talent into one. So it takes a long time to build those solid relationships. It also forces us to be sure that students are ready for those experiences, so that we're not sending students in underprepared into a live auto shop where they need to make some money, right? Pardon the casual language, but they're a business that has to run at a pace. And so we have to be sure that students are prepared before we put them into those situations.
So many things are negotiated at so many different levels. Some are very much personal, some are more administrative, and I'm sort of trying to make sure that I have a good sense of what's negotiated where.
And I will say we spend an incredible amount of money on transportation every year, but we have the luxury of Chittenden County, which is it's the biggest urban area in the state, and the surrounding towns that host a lot of industry and small industrial parks and stuff. It's relatively close proximity to our center. And I feel comfortable speaking for Essex in this regard too, because I know where they are, and Chittenden County is the most densely populated with those businesses. So I hope that got to some of your questions. Yeah.
So I'm interested in, through this committee's work, I've been we've learned more and more about what's the right way to put it, that the line between education and training, or high school and college, is blurring. And I'm curious about sort of tensions with that, with CTE, with college credits, with early college. And so if you could speak to that a little bit about what is a good way to navigate, ways to navigate that and tensions that you see for the CTE school?
You all are doing your research. These are great questions. And if I start wandering, because there's a lot of layers you just
Yeah.
asked about, rein me in. We talk about workforce development with career and technical education centers. Yes, the students need it to have good livelihoods. And the state needs to continue to grow our economy and meet current labor needs. We also have students that, whether it's their own desires, family desires, that it's non-negotiable. You'll go to college. That's just what we do. And so you have that mix, but students are still interested in the relevancy of learning and a deep interest in what CTE offers as an education model. And now CTE is obligated to offer in many programs, more than not, dual enrollment college credits while the students are juniors and seniors in high school. And this is separate from the state voucher system that the state approved, I'm going to say a half a decade ago, where high school students could take dual enrollment voucher classes. This is embedded in the CTE programs. So what we're also seeing is students who maybe didn't see themselves as a college-bound student are now taking dual enrollment. They're seeing the jobs at our industry partners where the person there says, well, yes, you need an engineering degree. Yes, you need a nursing degree. And they're saying, well, I've already got 6 credits. And my counselor told me about this advancement grant, told me about all of these great opportunities that Vermont continues to roll out to make higher ed accessible. And so we have a larger percentage of our students who are going on to college than going right into the workforce. That may be characteristic of Chittenden County as a demographic group. That's a question mark, but I think if you look at census data in Chittenden County, that lines up. But we're also introducing students to college pathways because we're obligated to, with our state obligations, which is the plan to meet federal legislation, affectionately, or maybe not so affectionately, sometimes known as the Perkins plan. And so we're constantly trying to help students weigh that. And we try to help them navigate too. I want to go right into the workforce. How do I know what's a good wage? Right. So I wandered a little bit there, but it does start to blur those lines. Early college, you mentioned, we used to have students who loved to do early college in our half-day center. That is now prohibited. So what we end up with is students who come in their junior year, they go to early college, and we end up with empty seats in our senior class. It's gotten to a point where it's a real stress point for me in terms of keeping our enrollment healthy. And so that prohibition happened during last school year. So we're losing those students. We're losing the Vermont adult learning students now. And we're putting out a lot of college credits for Vermont students at no cost to them, cost to our sending districts, of course. But I will say a lot of that college credit stuff is paid for by the agency of ed through the federal money that comes in, and they will pay VTSU and they will pay CCD directly out of that money, so that we're not passing on a whole lot of that dual enrollment cost to our sending districts, which is a nice use of that federal money. And I'll end with one other thought. I have met with industry partners, and we have talked about, this group, they all seem like they're going to college. Let's get them in. So when they finish that 4-year degree, 2-year degree, sometimes 6-year degree, they know that this is back here. Vermont's talked about brain drain. I saw Governor Douglas's portrait when I walked up here, right? He was talking about that back then. And we want to make sure they know that there are opportunities back in Vermont, even if they go out to college. My kids want to leave for a little while to go to school. And so I look at that as long-term workforce development. Because I have to, because we're forced to introduce them to those post-secondary opportunities. And I will also say it's a balance. CTE has had a stigma. I've been in CTE positions spanning 20 plus years. The stigma around CTE is for kids who aren't good in school, kids who don't like school. It's been a battle since I started in this field. And so we're torn between, if we show the college stuff, people are going to think we're relevant, good, well-rounded part of pre-K through 12 education. But then on the other hand, there's a lot of great opportunities. And now that industry in Vermont is paying higher and higher wages, there are great opportunities where students can delay college or maybe, not go at all or go through their employer's tuition reimbursement. So it's a delicate balance. But I always keep that Vermont workforce development, our young people knowing there are opportunities here, whether it's immediate or in the future. When they go in the military, that's out of my hands because the military may move them all over the place. And we do have a healthy chunk of students who want to serve in different branches of the armed forces.
I think we've been talking a lot about alignment issues
Yeah.
and the tuitioning and competition, that sort of tension that's there. And I'm wondering, which I think in part is why folks talk about governance sometimes. I mean, I think they're looking for, or I'll speak for myself, looking for some sort of mechanism or entity where if you got an alignment problem, that it's not enough just to good faith collaborate. And, what if you can't get to the point where you really should be, for CT students? And is there some way for there to be a final arbiter? Is the way I look at it. You got attention, you work on it, you talk to people and collaborate, but you don't get to the point where you think it needs to be. Have you thought any about, and I think that's where the governance issue comes up. Have you imagined some sort of way a mechanism or an entity that can resolve those tensions when collaboration isn't always enough?
I mean, I think I've always wondered about the role of the regional advisory board, and because it wasn't something that I was familiar with before I got here, and sort of the advisory nature of the regional advisory board. So I don't have the answer for you, but I think that when we were talking about program types, right? And so I think what I've experienced actually is the tension has brought sort of positive change. We've built out some programming that is more aligned to the industry and not overlapping with other programs nearby, like our food services program we closed based on this conversation and based on a couple of other factors. I haven't run into us wanting to do something that we felt was right for our students and for our broader community and just not be able to do that with the current governance structure. So I see the need for better alignment and communication, and I see why the system looks a little wonky. But it hasn't been from the perspective of not being able to produce or make decisions that we think are in the best interest of the kids we serve. That's been my experience.
Well, I do have a very important question. What's the update on the building?
Well, in this case, we're talking two buildings.
Right. Are they separated?
Well, we're on time and on schedule for BHS BTC at Institute Road, which would be a start date of August 2026. We have a sooner timeline for the BTC at the airport, although that one's a little off. We're straddling the on schedule there, right?
Yeah, it was complicated with a delayed Act 250 permit initially getting started. And then the grant that we're using for that renovation and construction is federal money that has the Build America, Buy America requirements. And there are some systems that are very challenging to source to meet those guidelines, like sprinkler pumps and fire alarm systems and things like that. So great team with the construction company and our project managers that are navigating those things. But they're working hard. They're putting in some hours, and I think I'm hopeful that we'll be in there for the start of the school year.
And I think the building projects show the commitment of the Burlington School Board to CTE and to BTC. There has been zero question from our board that they want to support BTC and our CTE programming. And the citizens of Burlington have voted to support that also, right? In including a significant piece, portion, wing of the new BHS BTC building to BTC and to be designed in that way. And then also providing support where the federal grant didn't meet the full cost at the airport. So I think that we have a lot of, we care about a lot and have skin in the game.
Thank you both for joining us this afternoon. Very helpful. And keep up the good work.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for your service in here.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And we're around if you ever want to talk to us more. But we appreciate you listening and being part of the conversation a lot.
Appreciate it. Why don't we go off live? Let's take a 5-minute break. Keep it 5.